He had reached a point where his patience had run out. For months he had tried to understand her behavior, to see through the walls she had built around herself, but every attempt seemed to meet a new barrier. He loved her, but love alone could not erase the frustration that had been building inside him. She had a way of avoiding difficult conversations, of smiling when she felt torn inside, and of leaving him guessing about her true feelings. It was exhausting to care so deeply and still feel like he was only seeing fragments of the real person he had come to know and cherish. He had tried to talk, to ask questions that might open the door to honesty, but she had always found a way to redirect the conversation or brush off the seriousness of his concerns. Tonight was different. Tonight he felt like he could no longer pretend that patience was enough. He wanted clarity. He needed it, and if she could not provide it, he would have to let her go. The thought made him ache, because letting go of someone he loved was unimaginable. Yet he could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing on him, making it hard to breathe. She sat across from him, the dim light of the room casting shadows that seemed to mirror the tension between them. She had sensed the seriousness in his voice earlier, a tone she had not heard before. There was a part of her that wanted to run, to escape the confrontation she knew was coming. But another part felt that maybe tonight she could finally tell him what she had been holding inside for so long. Her hands fidgeted nervously in her lap, and she avoided his gaze. Unsure if she could meet the intensity she saw in his eyes, he spoke with a calm that belied the storm inside him. He told her that he loved her deeply, that he cared for her more than he could express, but that he could not continue to feel like he was always waiting for a side of her she was unwilling to show. He explained that he needed honesty, that he needed her to be real with him, even when it was difficult. And then he gave her the ultimatum that had been forming in his mind for weeks. He told her that she had one night to decide, one night to leave or stay. One night to show him the truth about her feelings and about herself. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. She felt a sudden rush of fear and guilt, realizing that this was the moment she could no longer hide from. She wanted to cry, to apologize, to tell him that she understood. But the weight of what she had been keeping inside made her throat tight and her thoughts scatter. She felt cornered, yet strangely, there was a spark of relief. Relief because finally, there was no more hiding as he left the room for a moment to give her space. She sat alone with her racing mind. She thought of every mistake she had made, every lie of omission, every time she had let him down without intending to. She thought of the times she had smiled to mask fear, of the times she had avoided truth to protect herself, and she realized how much pain she had caused him without even trying. The weight of her own conscience pressed down on her, making her question every choice she had made in their time together. She walked around the room slowly, trying to make sense of her feelings. She remembered the first time they met, the way his eyes had held warmth and curiosity, the way he had listened without judgment, and how effortlessly he had drawn her out of her shell. She remembered moments of laughter, shared dreams, quiet evenings spent in simple companionship. And she remembered the promises she had whispered to herself. Promises to always be honest. Promises to never let fear dictate her actions. Now, those promises seemed distant, like echoes of someone she used to be. Meanwhile, he was in the kitchen, making himself a cup of tea, trying to calm the storm of emotions that raged inside him. He loved her. That much was certain. But love alone could not sustain a relationship built on uncertainty. He thought about the long months of confusion, the nights spent wondering if she really cared or if she was hiding something deeper. He had tried to trust her. He had tried to be patient. But patience had its limits, and he had reached them. His mind was a mixture of worry, hope, and fear. Hope that she would choose honesty, fear that she would choose to leave, and worry about the consequences of either outcome. The room felt heavy with unspoken words, with emotions that neither had yet fully articulated. She finally stood near the window, looking out at the quiet street, the soft glow of streetlights reflecting the uncertainty of the night. She thought about leaving, about walking away, and sparing both of them the pain of confrontation. But deep down, she knew that leaving would not ease the tension. It would only prolong the distance that had been growing between them. She needed to speak, to reveal the truth, to let him see the part of herself she had been hiding. He returned to the room, sensing the change in the air. There was a quiet determination in her posture, a tension that suggested she had made a decision. He looked at her, waiting, feeling the fragile thread that connected them stretched taut. He did not speak, giving her the space to choose her next words, to make the decision that could alter everything. He knew that whatever happened in the next few hours would define the future of their relationship. And the thought filled him with both dread and anticipation. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew she had only one night, one chance to decide if she would stay and reveal the truth, or leave and abandon what they had built together. She thought about his patience, his care, the unwavering support he had given her, even when she had been distant. She thought about the quiet moments that had held more meaning than words could convey. And in that moment she realized that leaving was not an option. She had to face the truth. Whatever it might bring, the night stretched on. Each moment waited with anticipation. Neither spoke immediately, the silence filled with memories and emotions that demanded recognition. She felt fear, uncertainty, and vulnerability, but also a strange sense of relief. She could no longer hide behind walls, no longer shield herself from the consequences of her choices. He, on the other hand, felt a mixture of anxiety and hope. Unsure of what she would say, but certain that whatever came next would determine the path of their relationship, she finally turned to him, her eyes meeting his with a sincerity she had never shown before. There was a tremor in her voice, a vulnerability that spoke of months of hidden feelings and unspoken truths. She began to speak, hesitant at first, carefully choosing words that carried the weight of her confession. She explained, not as an excuse, but as a truth she had been too afraid to share before. Each word seemed to release a piece of the burden she had carried, each sentence building a bridge between their hearts that had been fractured by uncertainty. He listened in silence, his emotions a complex mixture of relief, pain, and anticipation. Every revelation she shared struck him in different ways, challenging his perceptions, but also opening doors to understanding that had been closed for far too long. He realized that his frustration, while valid, had been compounded by misunderstanding, by the fear of losing someone he loved so deeply. And in that realization, a flicker of hope emerged, a possibility that love, honesty, and courage could overcome even the heaviest of burdens. The night continued, hours passing in a quiet intimacy of shared truths and emotional vulnerability. They talked about the past, about mistakes, about fears and dreams, about the unspoken moments that had shaped their relationship. The room, once heavy with tension, began to feel lighter as each confession and acknowledgement built a foundation for healing. The connection they had feared might be lost was slowly being restored, piece by piece, word by word, as the first light of dawn began to filter through the curtains. They sat together, exhausted, but connected in a way that neither had experienced before. The night had been long and emotionally draining, but it had also been transformative. They had faced the possibility of separation, confronted hidden truths, and emerged with a deeper understanding of each other. For the first time in a long while, there was clarity, and with it, a fragile but hopeful sense of renewal. She rested her head on his shoulder, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey they had endured together. He held her gently, feeling the warmth and trust returning between them. They knew the path ahead would not be easy, that challenges would remain, but for now, they allowed themselves to simply exist in the shared relief and comfort of honesty. The night had tested them, but it had also reminded them of the strength of their bond, a bond that, despite its cracks and trials, had survived the test of uncertainty and fear. She sat by the window, staring into the darkness outside, the cool night air brushing gently against her face. The street was quiet, every lamp casting pools of light that seemed to stretch endlessly. She could hear her own breathing, slow but uneven, a reminder of how tense she had been all day. She had never felt this much pressure, this weight of expectation and fear, yet deep down was a strange sense of freedom. The truth she had kept hidden for so long was ready to come out. And for the first time, she could imagine a world where she no longer had to carry the burden alone. She replayed every moment of their relationship in her mind, the small gestures that had meant more than words, The shared laughter, the quiet support, the moments when he had been there even when she had tried to hide from him. She thought about how he had always been patient, even when she had been distant, how he had offered understanding without judgment, and how he had somehow seen the parts of her she tried to keep secret. Each memory brought both warmth and sorrow, a reminder of how much she valued what they had and how close she had come to losing either. Hands trembled slightly as she reached for a notebook she had kept hidden for months, filled with thoughts she had never shared. It was a record of her fears, regrets, and confessions, written in hurried scrawls that had once felt too vulnerable to reveal. She opened it slowly, running her fingers over the words she had written in solitude. Each page was a piece of her heart, a fragment of her truth that she had been too afraid to show. Tonight, she thought, she would finally let him see these pieces. And maybe he would understand the reasons behind her actions and her silence meanwhile. He sat on the couch, his hands clasped tightly together. Staring at the floor, he was trying to prepare himself for whatever revelation was coming, to steady his mind and his heart for the moment when she would speak. He loved her, but he had been through weeks of uncertainty, nights of questioning, and moments of frustration that had left him drained. He knew that the coming conversation could change everything, and he felt both anxious and hopeful. He wanted to hear her truth, wanted to understand her fully, and yet the fear of what he might discover made him tense. She began to write again, trying to put her swirling emotions into words that made sense. She wrote about the moments she had felt lost, the times she had struggled to balance her own fears with her love for him, and the choices she had made that had caused misunderstandings. Writing helped her organize her thoughts, to prepare herself to speak with honesty and clarity. She realized that the night would be long and emotionally draining, but she felt ready to face it. She could no longer hide, could no longer let fear dictate her actions. Her actions' hours passed slowly as she continued to write. She thought about the first time she had realized her feelings for him. It's the way her heart had fluttered at the simplest gestures, the moments when his presence had made everything else fade. She remembered the times she had doubted herself, times when insecurity had kept her from being open, and times when she had chosen silence to protect herself rather than speak the truth. Those choices had built walls between them, walls that now needed to come down. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet night. He thought about the future, about what he wanted for both of them, and about the possibility that this night could either break or strengthen their bond. His mind wandered through memories as well, the moments of connection, the laughter, the small acts of love that had built their relationship. He realized that despite the frustrations, despite the uncertainty, he could not imagine a life without her. He knew that his heart would push him to stay, but he needed to hear the truth to understand fully and to decide with clarity back at the window. She closed her notebook and took a deep breath. She knew she had to speak soon, but she also needed to understand her own feelings completely. She wanted to be clear about what she needed, what she feared, and what she hoped for. The night was a space of reflection, a time to face her own emotions before she revealed them to him. She thought about the courage it would take to be fully vulnerable, and she reminded herself that honesty was the only path forward if they were to survive this test of their relationship. She moved to the couch and sat beside him, feeling the weight of the night pressing on both of them. There was silence for a few moments, comfortable yet heavy, as if the room itself held its breath. She looked at him, seeing the mixture of hope and anxiety in his eyes, and she realized how deeply they were connected despite the challenges. She wanted him to understand her, to see the truth behind her actions, and to know that her love had never wavered. Even when fear had guided her choices, she began to speak slowly, carefully, her voice soft but steady. She explained the struggles she had faced internally, the fears that had kept her from being fully open, and the moments when she had felt torn between honesty and self-protection. Each word was chosen with care, an attempt to bridge the gap that had formed between them. As she spoke, she felt a sense of release, a lifting of the weight she had carried for so long. For the first time, she could imagine being truly seen and understood. He listened attentively, his own emotions shifting with every word. He felt relief, understanding, and a growing sense of empathy. He realized that many of the frustrations he had felt were born from misunderstanding, from the fear of losing someone he loved, and from the lack of insight into the struggles she had faced silently. Her confession opened his heart, allowing him to see her not as someone who had failed him, but as someone who had been navigating her own fears and uncertainties. The conversation continued, flowing naturally from topic to topic, from past mistakes to current emotions, from fears to hopes for the future. They revisited memories, acknowledging both the pain and the joy, the misunderstandings and the moments of connection. Each exchange deepened their understanding of one another, reinforcing the bond that had been tested by uncertainty and distance. The night became a shared journey, a time of emotional intimacy that neither had experienced before. She shared moments of doubt, times when she had felt inadequate, and the internal battles that had prevented her from being fully open. He acknowledged her struggles, expressing his own fears and frustrations. And together, they began to dismantle the walls that had grown between them. It was a slow process, but each moment of honesty, each acknowledgement of vulnerability, brought them closer. They realized that the challenges they had faced were not insurmountable, and that love, when combined with honesty and understanding, could overcome even the deepest obstacles as the night progressed. They grew tired but remained connected, finding comfort in the presence of one another. The fear and tension that had marked the beginning of the evening had softened into a quiet intimacy. She felt lighter, relieved to have finally shared her truth, and he felt a sense of peace, knowing that they could face the future together with clarity and mutual understanding. The night had been long and emotionally intense, but it had also been transformative. Setting the stage for a renewed relationship built on honesty and empathy, they spoke of small dreams and plans, of hopes for their future and the ways they could support each other moving forward. Each word, each gesture, reinforced the idea that despite the challenges, they were committed to one another. They acknowledged the mistakes of the past, not with blame, but with understanding, and recognized the strength that came from facing difficulties together. The night had become a turning point, a moment that marked the end of uncertainty and the beginning of a new chapter in their relationship. The first hints of dawn began to appear, casting a gentle light over the room. They remained close, sharing the quiet moments of reflection and calm after the intensity of the night. She rested her head on his shoulder and he held her, feeling the warmth and connection that had survived despite the fear and tension. They knew that challenges would remain, that life would continue to test their bond. But they also knew that they had faced one of the most difficult moments together and had emerged stronger in the silence of the early morning. They allowed themselves to simply be present with one another, appreciating the depth of their connection and the courage it had taken to reach this point. They had spent the night confronting fear, uncertainty, and hidden truths, and in doing so, had rediscovered the strength of their love. The experience had shown them that honesty, vulnerability, and empathy were not weaknesses, but the foundations of a relationship that could endure even the most difficult trials. She took a deep breath and looked at him, finally ready to reveal the truth she had kept buried for so long. Her hands shook slightly, but she forced herself to speak, her voice calm yet full of emotion. She began to explain the struggles she had faced, the moments when fear and doubt had guided her choices, and the reasons she had felt unable to share everything with him before. Each word was carefully chosen, meant to build understanding rather than justify past actions. She wanted him to see the real her, the parts of herself she had hidden even from those who cared most. He listened intently, his heart beating faster with every sentence. There was a mixture of shock, sadness, and empathy in his eyes as he processed her confession. He realized that some of the misunderstandings and frustrations he had felt were not because she did not care, but because she had been carrying burdens silently. The weight she had been holding had influenced her actions and decisions, creating distance and tension that neither had fully understood until now. He felt a deep compassion for her and a renewed desire to protect and support her. She spoke about moments when she had felt overwhelmed by expectations, when she had struggled to balance her emotions with her love for him. She admitted to hiding her fears and pretending everything was fine, thinking it was better than admitting vulnerability. She described nights of anxiety, the loneliness of feeling unable to confide in anyone, and the guilt she carried for causing him confusion and pain. Each confession released some of the tension she had held inside, and with each revelation, he saw the courage it had taken for her to finally speak. He reached for her hand, holding it gently as he asked questions to understand her feelings better. He did not interrupt or judge. He only sought clarity. She explained the moments she had felt torn, between leaving to protect him from her own struggles or staying, and risking that her hidden fears might damage what they shared. He felt the weight of her words, realizing that her love had been constant, even when her actions had seemed inconsistent. He recognized her sincerity and the depth of her vulnerability, and he felt a new sense of respect and admiration for her. They spent hours discussing the past, unraveling the misunderstandings that had created walls between them. She shared memories of times she had avoided conversations, the decisions that had caused tension, and the fears that had kept her from being fully honest. He shared his perspective, the moments of frustration and uncertainty, and the fear of losing someone he loved deeply. The conversation was emotional, raw, and honest, each word bridging the distance that had grown between them over time. As she continued to speak, he noticed the subtle signs of her relief and vulnerability. She leaned into him slightly, trusting him with her emotions in a way she had never done before. He felt protective and tender, wanting to ease her pain and reassure her of his unwavering commitment. The room felt charged with emotion, a mixture of tension, understanding, and hope. Both knew that the night would be a turning point, a chance to rebuild trust and intimacy that had been strained but never broken. She told him about the moments she had questioned herself, times when self-doubt had made her retreat, and the inner battles that had influenced her behavior. She spoke of regret and sorrow, but also of love and loyalty. She wanted him to understand that her actions had not been meant to hurt him, but were born from fear and confusion. Her honesty created a sense of intimacy, allowing him to see the complexity of her emotions and the courage it had taken to confront them. He responded with empathy, acknowledging her struggles without dismissing the pain they had caused. He expressed his understanding and appreciation for her courage, emphasizing that love required honesty, even when it was difficult. His words reassured her, creating a safe space where vulnerability could exist without judgment. She felt a warmth and relief that had been absent for months. Realizing that she was finally being seen and understood for who she truly was, the night unfolded with a series of confessions, questions, and reflections. They spoke of the mistakes that had been made, the moments when communication had faltered, the times they had misread each other's intentions. She admitted to keeping secrets out of fear, while he acknowledged his own impatience and assumptions. Each exchange strengthened their connection, revealing that their bond had endured despite the challenges and miscommunications. They realized that honesty and empathy were more powerful than anger or resentment. She revealed a particularly deep fear she had kept hidden, a fear that had shaped many of her choices. He listened carefully, absorbing the weight of her emotions, feeling both the pain and the courage behind her words. He understood that her fear had not diminished her love for him, but had complicated the way she expressed it. In that moment, he saw the depth of her humanity, the struggles that had gone unnoticed, and he felt a renewed determination to support her and walk beside her through life's challenges. They talked about the times when she had felt alone, misunderstood, or burdened by unspoken expectations. He reassured her that he wanted to face those struggles with her, that he would not turn away even when things were difficult. She felt a sense of trust growing, a connection that went beyond words. The vulnerability they shared allowed them to experience a closeness that had been impossible before, a bond strengthened by honesty, understanding, and shared emotional effort. As the hours passed, they explored the impact of her hidden struggles on their relationship, discussing how misunderstandings had built tension and distance. She explained how her silence had sometimes been misinterpreted, how her fear of conflict had led to avoidance, and how her love had been constant even when her actions had been confusing. He listened and acknowledged the truth in her words, recognizing that their challenges had not been due to a lack of love, but to unspoken emotions and unmet understanding. He expressed gratitude for her courage, for taking the step to reveal her truth despite the fear of rejection or misunderstanding. She felt a sense of relief and affirmation, knowing that her honesty had been received with care and empathy. The room seemed to breathe with them, the tension of previous weeks giving way to a gentle calm. They were no longer separated by hidden fears, but connected by a shared willingness to confront the truth and embrace vulnerability. They reflected on the past, acknowledging the moments when they had hurt each other unintentionally and the times they had failed to communicate effectively. They spoke with patience and compassion, recognizing that their bond was resilient and capable of growth. Each confession, each acknowledgement, reinforced the idea that love was not about perfection, but about understanding. Forgiveness and mutual support, she shared hopes for the future, expressing her desire to continue building a relationship based on honesty and openness. He responded with his own aspirations, emphasizing the importance of trust, empathy, and emotional connection. Together, they envisioned a path forward, one where challenges could be met with communication and understanding rather than fear and avoidance. The night became a space of possibility. Where love was strengthened by courage and shared emotional effort, they held hands and sat close, feeling the warmth and presence of one another. The emotional intensity of the confession had created a bond that was both fragile and powerful. They knew the journey ahead would require continued effort, patience, and understanding, but they also recognized the strength of their connection and the depth of their commitment. The night had transformed uncertainty into clarity, fear into hope, and distance into intimacy as the first light of morning began to filter through the curtains. They remained together, sharing quiet moments of reflection and comfort. She felt lighter, unburdened by the truths she had revealed, and he felt a renewed sense of connection and responsibility. The night had been challenging, emotional, and transformative, but it had also been a turning point. They had faced the possibility of separation, confronted hidden fears, and emerged with a deeper understanding of one another and the relationship they shared in the calm of the early morning. They allowed themselves to simply exist together. Appreciating the vulnerability and honesty that had defined the night, she rested against him, feeling the security and warmth of his presence. And he held her, cherishing the trust and openness that had been established. They knew that challenges would continue to come, but they also knew that their bond was strengthened by the willingness to speak the truth. To listen deeply and to embrace vulnerability together, he sat quietly, absorbing every word she spoke, feeling the depth of her emotions and the courage it had taken for her to reveal them. The room was still. The only sounds were their soft breathing and the faint hum of the city outside. He thought about the months of tension, the misunderstandings, the nights of worry and frustration. And now he realized how much had been hidden beneath her quiet exterior. Her honesty illuminated everything he had not understood. And with it came a mixture of relief, sorrow, and deep empathy. He remembered the moments when he had been frustrated, times when he had doubted whether she cared or if she was keeping things from him. He saw now that much of his anger had been misplaced, born from misunderstanding and fear. Her confession showed him the complexity of her emotions, the struggles she had faced silently, and the love that had remained constant despite her fears. He felt a shift within himself, a softening of the walls he had built, and a growing desire to stay, to support her, and to continue building what they had together. She watched him closely, unsure of how he would respond, but she could sense the change in his demeanor. His eyes, once tense and wary, now held a mixture of understanding and care. She felt a flicker of hope, but she also knew the fragility of this moment. They had come to a turning point, and the path forward depended on the choices they made in the hours to come. She wanted to give him space, to let him process, but she also wanted to be near, to offer comfort and reassurance. He leaned back slightly, closing his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of his thoughts settle. He considered the possibility of leaving, of protecting himself from further confusion or disappointment. But each time he imagined walking away, he felt a profound emptiness. The love he had for her was too deep, too rooted in shared memories, trust and care to allow separation to be the answer. He knew he needed to confront his fears, to face the truth with courage, and to make a conscious choice to stay because he wanted to. Not because of obligation or pity. He opened his eyes and looked at her, taking in the sincerity and vulnerability that had been absent for so long. He realized that the decision he faced was not just about staying or leaving, but about embracing a future built on honesty, empathy, and trust. He thought about the times she had been there for him. It's the moments of support, laughter, and quiet companionship that had defined their relationship. He knew that he wanted those moments to continue, that he wanted to face challenges together rather than apart. She reached for his hand, feeling the tension in his grip slowly ease. She did not pressure him, only offered a gentle touch that spoke of care and patience. He felt the warmth of her hand, the reassurance in her presence, and it grounded him. He began to speak, hesitantly at first, sharing his feelings of fear, frustration, and hope. He told her that he had been struggling with uncertainty, but that her honesty had opened a door he had feared would remain closed forever. He admitted that his love for her was stronger than any fear, and that he wanted to stay and build a future together. She listened, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and gratitude. She felt the tension that had gripped her for so long slowly dissipate. For months she had feared rejection, abandonment, and the possibility that he could not understand her fully. Now she saw the depth of his empathy, his willingness to confront his own emotions, and his choice to remain by her side. The turning point they had both feared had arrived, and it brought a sense of hope and possibility. He shared more of his internal struggle, the moments when doubt had crept in, and the times he had questioned whether love could endure such hidden fears and secrets. She responded with understanding, acknowledging the challenges they had faced together and expressing her commitment to being open and honest moving forward. They spoke of the importance of trust, communication, and mutual support. Recognizing that these would be essential in maintaining a strong and healthy relationship, the conversation flowed naturally, moving from past challenges to present understanding and future hopes. They discussed ways to navigate difficulties, to support one another, and to ensure that misunderstandings would not create distance again. Each exchange strengthened their connection, reinforcing the idea that love was not only about affection but also about empathy, patience, and shared effort. They were learning to rebuild their bond on a foundation of truth and understanding. He expressed his commitment to staying, emphasizing that it was a choice born from love and understanding rather than obligation. She felt a deep sense of relief, knowing that her honesty had been met with care and acceptance. The night had been emotionally intense, but it had also been transformative, allowing them to confront fears, acknowledge vulnerabilities, and reaffirm their bond. They recognized that challenges would continue, but they were prepared to face them together. They shared memories of times when their connection had been strongest, recalling moments of laughter, support, and quiet intimacy. These memories reminded them of the foundation of their relationship and the reasons they had been drawn to each other in the first place. They acknowledged the mistakes and misunderstandings that had created tension, but they also celebrated the resilience and strength that had allowed them to endure and grow as the night deepened. They reflected on the lessons learned from their struggles. They discussed the importance of honesty, the courage required to confront fears, and the power of empathy in understanding one another. Each reflection reinforced their commitment to staying together, to supporting each other, and to nurturing a relationship built on trust and emotional intimacy. They understood that the turning point was not a single moment, but a series of choices and shared efforts. She spoke about her hopes for the future, expressing her desire to continue building a relationship rooted in truth and mutual care. He responded with his own aspirations, emphasizing the importance of being present, listening, and supporting one another through challenges. Together, they envisioned a path forward where love was strengthened by shared vulnerability, understanding, and commitment. The night became a symbol of transformation, a moment where fear and uncertainty gave way to clarity and connection. They held each other close, feeling the warmth and comfort of shared presence. The emotional intensity of the evening had created a bond that was both fragile and powerful. They recognized that the journey ahead would require continued effort, patience, and empathy, but they also felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. The turning point had arrived, and it marked the beginning of a deeper, more resilient connection. They spoke of small steps they could take to maintain honesty and communication, to ensure that misunderstandings did not create distance. Each plan, each suggestion reinforced their commitment to one another and their willingness to invest in the relationship. They understood that love required active effort, mutual understanding, and the courage to confront difficult emotions together. The night had become a foundation for growth, a space where emotional intimacy could flourish. He looked at her with tenderness, acknowledging the courage it had taken for her to reveal her truth. She felt the sincerity in his gaze, the warmth of his presence, and the reassurance that he had chosen to stay. They shared a quiet moment of reflection, appreciating the depth of their connection and the journey they had taken together. The turning point had been challenging, emotional, and transformative. But it had also brought clarity, understanding, and renewed hope. As dawn approached, they sat together, holding hands and sharing the calm of the early morning. They allowed themselves to rest in the comfort of one another's presence, feeling the strength of the bond that had been tested and strengthened through honesty and empathy. The turning point had not erased challenges, but it had created a foundation for navigating them with love, patience, and mutual support. They knew that together they could face whatever lay ahead. The morning light filled the room with a soft glow, bringing warmth and a sense of calm after the long night of emotions. They sat together, close but quiet, each taking a moment to process what had happened. The air was lighter now, filled with relief and understanding rather than tension and fear. The night had tested their relationship, had stretched them emotionally, and had forced them to confront truths they had hidden for too long. Yet through all of it, they had survived and discovered a deeper bond. She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the comfort and security of his presence. The fears that had weighed on her for months seemed to have lifted slightly, replaced by a sense of trust and hope. She realized that sharing her truth had been the most difficult step, yet also the most freeing. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen completely, with all her fears and flaws acknowledged, yet accepted. She knew that this was only the beginning. But the beginning was promising, and strong. He held her hand and spoke softly, reflecting on the night and the decisions they had made. He told her that he understood her better now, that he appreciated the courage it had taken for her to open up, and that he wanted to continue building their relationship on honesty and care. He admitted that the night had been challenging for him as well, forcing him to confront his own emotions, fears, and expectations. Yet he felt a sense of clarity and purpose, knowing that staying with her was the choice of love, understanding, and commitment. They spent the morning talking about small things, letting the intensity of the night settle into calm conversation. They laughed gently at shared memories, recalled moments of joy, and found comfort in the simplicity of being together. It was a moment of peace, a time to recover from the emotional storm and to acknowledge that their bond had grown stronger through the challenges they had faced. Each word, each gesture, reinforced the connection that had survived the test of honesty and vulnerability. She spoke about how she wanted to approach their relationship differently from now on, emphasizing openness, communication, and trust. She admitted that she had learned from the mistakes of the past, from the times when fear and hesitation had prevented her from being fully present. He listened attentively, offering support and affirmation, acknowledging that growth was a journey they would take together. They understood that change would not happen instantly, but that small, consistent efforts could create lasting impact. They reflected on the lessons learned from the long night. Honesty, they realized, was not only about revealing secrets, but also about expressing emotions, fears, and hopes consistently. Vulnerability was not a weakness, but a bridge that could bring them closer. And empathy was the key to understanding and supporting each other. They promised to remain patient with one another, to listen deeply, and to approach conflicts with care rather than anger. These commitments became the foundation for a renewed relationship. He shared moments from his own reflections, times when he had doubted himself and the future, and moments when he had feared losing her. She listened, offering understanding and compassion, recognizing that both of them had been navigating difficult emotions in their own ways. The conversation deepened their connection, showing that both were committed to facing challenges honestly and together. They realized that their love was strengthened, not by perfection, but by willingness to understand and grow. They spoke about their future in practical terms, discussing how they could support each other emotionally and in everyday life. They talked about routines, ways to check in on each other's feelings, and strategies to avoid miscommunication. Each idea was met with agreement and care, reflecting their desire to maintain a healthy, loving, and resilient relationship. The morning became a space for planning, healing, and envisioning a future where both could thrive together. She reflected on how much had changed in the night, how fear and uncertainty had been transformed into clarity and hope. She felt grateful for his patience, empathy, and love, realizing that the choice he had made to stay was a testament to the strength of their bond. She knew that challenges would continue to arise, that life would test them in unexpected ways. But she also knew that they were prepared to face these challenges as a team, with honesty and mutual support as their guide. He, too, reflected on the night and the decisions they had made. He felt grateful for her courage, for the trust she had placed in him, and for the opportunity to understand her more fully. He realized that staying was not just about love, but about partnership, about commitment to face life's uncertainties together. The clarity he had gained allowed him to see their relationship in a new light, one of resilience, growth, and shared responsibility. He felt ready to embrace the future. Confident that together they could navigate whatever came their way, they spent the day in small, meaningful ways, sharing breakfast, walking through quiet streets, and enjoying moments of connection that were simple yet profound. Each action, each conversation, reinforced the strength of their bond and the importance of presence, attentiveness, and care. They discovered that healing and growth were not only achieved through major confessions, but also through daily acts of love and attention. These moments became the foundation for ongoing intimacy and trust as the day progressed. They revisited memories and moments that had been sources of tension in the past, reflecting on them with empathy rather than blame. They spoke about miscommunications, hidden fears, and past choices, understanding that each had played a role in shaping their current connection. The conversation was gentle, compassionate, and productive, allowing them to see each other with fresh eyes and renewed understanding. They recognized that the strength of their relationship lay not in avoiding mistakes, but in facing them together. Evening approached, bringing a quiet sense of satisfaction and contentment. They sat together, sharing thoughts about what they had learned, the growth they had experienced, and the importance of continuing to nurture their bond. They acknowledged the fragility of trust and the effort required to maintain openness. Yet they also celebrated the resilience and depth of their connection. The day had been a journey from vulnerability to understanding, from fear to hope, and from uncertainty to clarity. They spoke about how they wanted to approach conflicts in the future, emphasizing communication, patience, and empathy. They acknowledged that challenges would come, but they were committed to facing them as partners, with respect and understanding guiding their actions. Each commitment reinforced their connection and their confidence in the relationship. They felt empowered by their shared experiences and the lessons learned, recognizing that love required active engagement and intentional care as night fell. They reflected on the transformation of the past 24 hours. The fear and tension that had marked the previous evening had given way to connection, understanding, and renewed commitment. They felt a deep sense of gratitude for the opportunity to confront hidden truths and to emerge stronger. The night had been a crucible, testing the strength of their bond and proving that honesty, empathy, and courage could overcome even the most challenging moments. They held each other close, appreciating the warmth, comfort, and trust they had rebuilt. The journey had been emotional and demanding, but it had also been transformative, creating a foundation for growth, understanding, and love. They recognized that their relationship would continue to evolve, that challenges would arise, and that effort would be required. But they were confident in their ability to face the future. Together she whispered thoughts about hope, gratitude, and commitment, and he responded with reassurance, understanding, and love. They acknowledged that the past was a teacher, the present a moment of connection, and the future an opportunity for growth and shared happiness. The day had brought clarity, resolution, and renewed trust. establishing a strong foundation for the journey ahead. As they prepared to rest, they felt a quiet contentment, knowing that the trials they had faced had strengthened rather than weakened them. The night and day had been transformative, filled with honesty, reflection, and mutual support. They had learned the power of vulnerability, the importance of empathy. It's the strength that comes from facing challenges together. They knew that love was not perfect, but it was resilient, capable of growth. And worthy of commitment, they drifted into a calm evening, comforted by the presence of one another, secure in the knowledge that the connection they shared had been tested and affirmed. The story of their night and day became a testament to the power of honesty, courage, and understanding in relationships. They knew that life would continue to present challenges, but they had discovered the tools and the commitment to face them together with patience, empathy, and unwavering love. The final moments of the day were quiet and serene, filled with reflection and appreciation. They had emerged from fear and uncertainty into clarity and hope, recognizing that the strength of their bond lay in the ability to communicate, to empathize, and to support one another. They were no longer defined by the struggles of the past, but by the choices they had made to stay, understand, and grow together. The journey had been difficult, but it had also been deeply rewarding. Creating a foundation for a future filled with trust, love, and shared growth,